Yes, we have some more information for you once again, more from French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot, who says the US and Europe are preparing new sanctions targeting Russia's energy and financial sectors. The statement comes ahead of a NATO foreign ministers meeting in Turkey as President Putin skips peace talks in Istanbul. I want to go over to Joshua Barnes now, anchor and correspondent for NewsX World. This is obviously the second time this meeting has happened in the same city, Joshua. And I was wondering if you could give us a bit more information about how that meeting went previously in March of 2022.
The full-scale invasion from Russia in Ukraine came as a surprise, and there are experts who believe that Vladimir Putin assumed that this invasion would take a matter of days. I want to allude first to a conversation which actually happened 4 days after that initial troop movement from Russia into Ukraine, and this took place in Belarus on February the 28th of 2022. This meeting was then followed by several other meetings, video meetings, and then you've alluded to there that final in-person meeting, the last meeting that took place directly between Russia and Ukraine before talks broke down on March the 29th. Now, what was being discussed was some form of plan, and draft documents were actually published in the New York Times last year, which detailed some of the things which had been spoken about, some of the topics of discussion, and also the sticking points in these talks. Just to give you an idea, Ukraine was prepared to become permanently neutral, also looking to be non-aligned and a nuclear-free state with no foreign troops or weapons on its soil. Of course, this is something now that we speak a lot about, which is the Western allied weapons that have been given to Ukraine, of course causing a huge blow-up and conflict in the Oval Office between Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky. But this, of course, 3 years ago, and that was what Ukraine were looking at. Now, these terms are significant because what it would have meant is that Ukraine would have been barred from joining NATO, but would have allowed the opportunity for an EU membership in Ukraine. In return, they would have received security guarantees from a group of countries, including 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. Now, these are Britain, China, the United States, France, and Russia. So interesting there to see. Now, these discussions led to a partially agreed draft deal. This, of course, following halts to Russia's advance. We know the Wagner Group were heavily involved in earlier stages of the war as well, and progress was made, but Ukraine, of course, made moves back. Let's now briefly look at the points of disagreement. If Ukraine was attacked, it wanted guarantors to provide assistance to it, which could include closing airspaces, providing the necessary weapons, which we have seen, of course, moving forward, and using armed force in order to restore and subsequently maintain the security of Ukraine. Russia insisting that any decision needed to be agreed by all guarantor states, meaning Moscow would have a veto, of course, which in this instance, when there's a country that is part of the war, having a veto over the decision of safety is an interesting one. The two sides also disagreed on the size of Ukraine's military and armed forces. I want to clarify, this information has come out from the New York Times, a leaking, a document basically, drop which was given. These haven't been confirmed by either countries, but this does give us a little bit of a snapshot into what was being discussed. Now, moving forward, these talks, Steve Witkoff spoke about using those previous talks and discussions as a framework, but I mentioned a couple of times already where areas of agreement in the previous deal has now been changed because of the developments and the involvement of allies in the war and supporting Ukraine as well. Sanctions is a key sticking point too. Of course, Russian sanctions have been extreme in certain situations. We've seen businesses and brands leaving Russia at an extremely high rate as well. Given the fact that these talks have been delayed, we wait to see where they will be picking up from. But that's just a little snapshot into those previous discussions back in 2022.
Thank you very much, Joshua, for